gentlemen, welcome to another webinar from Philips Lighting University. Today's webinar is titled Lighting University, Light, Art and Biophilia, and it will be presented to you by Maja Petrić, who is an artist working at the interface of science, technology, design and art. And I will hand over to Maja from here.
Hello, my name is Maja Petrić, I'm very happy to speak to you today. I will talk to you about my work, which is with new technologies. I've been focusing on creating immersive art by transforming the poetic experience of space. And through an experimentation with various mediums, I discovered that light is the most powerful tool to do that. Light is everywhere, it affects every experience, and all living beings have an innate response to light. And by its very nature, light is an immensely potent tool to shape spaces and arouse visceral responses. And once I recognized that light is such a potent medium in an artistic sense, I wanted to discover more. And what I found was that there was no recorded body of knowledge on this topic, so I focused my research during my master at New York University, and especially in my independent research at the University of Washington, where I was doing a doctorate on using light as an artistic tool. The evolution of my practice led me to the current investigation of individual and complementary effects of light, art, and biophilia on human experience. And today I will be sharing with you my creative research on this topic. So in other words, my work is about changing the perception for the purpose of art. To change perception, I have been focused on phenomenology, or study of human experience. And to create spatial art, I have been working with various materials, especially smart technologies, audio visuals, and lighting to transform the artistic perception of space. The core of my artistic research is the sublime. The sublime stands for a lofty or grand experience, and the definition has been debated since the ancient times, but to this date there is still no clear definition of the term. The theoreticians do agree that it cannot be put into words, and to experience the sublime it is necessary to go beyond reason and employ sensibility and imagination. I believe that the sublime, for that reason, that it cannot be defined, but it can be experienced, should be experienced. It's profoundly valuable to experience it and pursue discovering new ways to provide the experience. And for me as an artist, this is the end goal, and in my pursuit to do so, I looked at other artists who achieved this goal. One of the artists is English romantic landscape painter Joseph Mallord William Turner. His most notable painting, The Snowstorm, steamboat of a harbor's mouth making signals in a shallow water, portrays a ship in a distress of the English coast. The painting documents the event, but it mostly documents the sensation of witnessing the event from up close. Looking at this work, one can learn about the event, but one can also feel how was it to see the troubled ship while it was being immersed in a storm. And one can also feel the sensation of being immersed. Turner painted this piece during the era of realistic depiction of historical events. Most of the paintings during that time were such as this. This is actually Turner's piece that he did a couple of years earlier, before the painting I just showed you, and it's depicting the very similar scenario, but it's doing it in a very representational way. Here, he's using a high degree of abstraction, asymmetrical composition, and monochromatic palette to achieve much more than mere depiction of the event. Through this two-dimensional medium, he manages to engage viewers and their multiple senses, and to create an immediate experience of both awe and terror, and as such, I think it stands as an example of the sublime in painting. The reason I started with Turner is to point at the manipulation of senses that is so beautifully articulated here. The innovative use of materials that engages collaboration between sight, hearing, touch, smell, emotion, memory, and imagination is what can transform the experience. To illustrate this premise, I like to refer to this Caravaggio's amazingly visceral painting. It is a representation of Saint Thomas reaching out his hand to touch the Christ. Again, it visually portrays a story that informs us about Thomas poking into Jesus, but it is so visceral that we see with our eyes such a powerful images of touch that translate into a physical sensation on our own flesh. I always feel like somebody's poking me by just looking at this image. It has such an effect. And this is exactly what I'm interested in creating in my own work, researching and experiencing in other works too. It is a lasting sensation that meaningfully engages mind, body, and emotion. When looking at all these works, I realized that the way this was done was always by putting viewer's body in the center. Experience is triggered phenomenologically, and so the possibility of the sublime, the rich sensation that can be felt inside out, is so much more direct. In our contemporary time, the art has many more mediums accessible to stimulate wider range of senses. Contemporary artists have followed the lead of Richard Wagner's Gesamtkunstwerk, or the total work of art, from 1849, that intentionally included all the senses into a total experience of theater. And last 50 years of art have been marked by meaningful treatment and inclusion of space and multisensory experience into the experience of art. And one of the examples is this James Terrell's work, the Wolfsburg Project. It is a Ganzfeld piece, and Ganzfeld actually stands for perceptual deprivation, a phenomenon of perception caused by exposure to an unstructured, uniform stimulation field. Here, Terrell worked in a simple hollow construction that was divided into two interconnecting chambers. One was the viewing space, and the sensing space was the other. They were both left entirely empty and slowly flooded with changing colored light. With change of light, architectural elements of the space dissolved into homogeneous visual field. And this Ganzfeld effect created a sensation of the space changing. The lack of content, the lack of sensory input led to much richer multisensory experience, because brain of visitors started constructing the shapes of space that didn't exist. As you can see in this image, the space looks very different at different stages. Juhani Pallasmaa wrote that sensory experiences become integrated through the body. Every touching experience of architecture is multisensory. Qualities of space, matter, and scale are measured equally by eye, ear, nose, skin, tongue, skeleton, and muscle. He stresses out the importance of engaging collaboration within all of our sensory systems, but also with our emotion and imagination. And during experimentations across different media, I discovered that light is an immensely potent tool to morph experiences. Since then, I have been studying and practicing how to manipulate senses by calibrating properties of light to create compelling experiences. Light can be used as a creative tool to engage perception, memory, and emotion. I think one of the reasons why it is so powerful is that it is ubiquitous. It all starts with light. It is a source of life. It is everywhere. It affects everything. It is what shapes our environment. As such, we as human beings have primordial response to light at all times. It is ephemeral. It is constantly changing. It is dynamic, ever transforming, and as such, compelling time-based medium. Light is mysterious. It is a basic, universal element, but we still don't fully understand it. In the words of the great physicist Richard Feynman, the nature of light and even the nature of nature is inconceivable. Understanding full complexity of light is still out of our reach. Until not so long ago, the only way to explain the mysterious parts of the universe was to attribute them to a deity. Today, many of us believe that just because many aspects of light are still a mystery to us, it doesn't mean that they are in the hand of God, as it is portrayed in this Michelangelo's fresco. It is an unknown that waits to be discovered through science and art. These three immensely potent and complex properties of light are what shapes every human experience. As such, light is a powerful material that can be used intentionally for creating specific kind of experiences. In my quest to create a transformative art sensations, I focus on calibrating these properties. And many artists, designers, cinematographers, even cave painters from prehistoric times have been calibrating these properties as vehicles of their artistic intents. What I'm proposing in my work is to learn from all of them, but also from science, and continue expanding this body of knowledge. So one of the examples from which we can learn are the cave paintings. These painted forms were made to be looked under the flickering torchlight. When the flickering light passes over the cave paintings of animals with multiple limbs or heads, as they are often portrayed, their forms are repeated. And they're repeated because they were supposed to be looked at with the flickering torchlight. And this combination of the repeated forms and the flickering torchlight creates a sensation of animals moving. As such, this is a predecessor of a movie, but also example of a meaningful use of light that perpetuates the artistic intent. They knew what they were doing and why they were doing it. Jumping to the 15th century, we find Leonardo da Vinci studying light both as an artist and a scientist. He intended to understand the natural forces, and therefore he explored mathematics, physics, optics, botany, zoology, mechanics, hydraulics, astronomy, philosophy, and so many other disciplines that explain the anatomy of the human eye, nature of light, and mechanics of camera obscura, the first camera. Leonardo da Vinci's preoccupation with the natural world led him to the fields of optics and astronomy that transformed his art, and many others after him. His notable painting, The Last Supper, represents a lifetime of scholarly pursuit in the fields of optics and light. It is one of only Da Vinci's paintings that details in the process of his, he detailed the process of creating the painting in his notebooks. And there we can see a careful attention to the composition and the reflection of light. In sketches and comments, particularly related to the positioning of figures, he noted that the spatial arrangements of characters, which was particularly important in determining the reflection and refraction of light among figures and objects. As part of his study for the piece, Da Vinci likely outlined the movement of the rays of light in perspective and how each ray caused illumination and shadow on the faces of the characters, and how the shadows cast from inanimate objects were connected with the refraction of those rays. His understanding of light was driving his artistic intent and engaging viewers into this piece. Another example we can find in film. in many films. Here I have pointed out The Days of Heaven. Much of the film was shot during a magic hour, which is actually not an hour, but around 25 minutes at the most, when the sun sets and after the sun sets and before it's night. At that moment, the sky has light, but there is no actual sun. And lighting was integral to filming and helped evoke the painterly quality of the landscapes in the film. For the shot in the insect sequence, where the insects are falling, as you see here, they're rising into the sky, the filmmakers dropped peanut shells from helicopters. They had the actors walk backwards while running the film in reverse through the camera. When it was projected, everything moved forward except the insects. Another example from which we can learn how to manipulate elements to create specific sensations of light that is much more familiar to viewers by using artificial elements such as the peanut shells. Was much easier to convey insects rising into the sky than actually using insects, which they try to do also. Here we have James Terrell again, who gives us another example with his land art project in form of this 400,000-year-old 3-mile wide crater land that he transformed into a massive naked-eye observatory for viewing and experiencing skylight, solar, and celestial phenomena. The entire space is designed to enhance the experience of the fleeting winter and summer solstice events. All of these works and 350 more of them have been listed in the book I have been preparing for a couple of years. It is a book that called History of Light in Art, Light Art Today, and it organizes and documents artworks that use light in a meaningful way throughout the history. Some other works that you will find there are works by Thomas Wilfred, Cornelia Parker, Daniel Canogar, and many others. The book will be out later this fall, and if you're interested to know more about it, please contact me. I would be happy to tell you more information about the content and the book itself. As part of my research, I also investigate what happens to our body and mind when we experience artworks that we just saw. Neuroaesthetics is a new field of research emerging at the intersection of psychological aesthetics, neuroscience, and human evolution that investigates what goes on in a human brain when it experiences art. And the research has shown that blood flow increased 10% to the joy response part of the brain when subjects saw a beautiful painting. It had the same effect as when they would look at a loved one. In March 2015, a Dutch charity has granted a terminally ill woman's dying wish, wheeling her into a museum on a special bed for a private viewing of the Rembrandt's painting. Well, the experience of art is hard to quantify, and neuroaesthetics is still considered quite speculative. This clearly reflects the immense power of art. I'm also interested in what happens to human body and mind when connecting with nature, when connecting with natural light. What happens when one is immersed in nature, and what happens when one is engrossed in nature-inspired artwork. Edward O. Wilson popularized the concept of the biophilia that suggests that humans possess an innate tendency to seek connections with nature and other forms of life. He says that human beings have an innate instinct to connect emotionally with nature. And this is one of the reasons why I've been focused on nature as a theme in art. Art itself has a task to provoke emotions, and especially in my case, where I'm trying to create a visceral sensation, and humans are already programmed to have an innate response to nature. So I will show you a little bit of how I have been treating these subjects in my own work. One of my first larger installations that embodied these ideas is called the Outside In, and it is an installation, interactive light installation that was created to transform the atmosphere of the shattered pedestrian tunnel at New York City subway on the 191st Street. From all the horrible New York City subway stops, this has been voted by far the worst. New Yorkers call it the Tunnel of Doom. In the last couple of years, it actually has been somewhat transformed, but it is a space that is used by Metro but owned by the city, and to this day also it has not been utterly cleaned because nobody wants to own up to take care of it. It is 55 meters below street level and 100 meters long tunnel of doom that pedestrians need to pass in order to reach the station. So I wanted to create an intervention in part of the tunnel that would affect the experience of the entire tunnel. My proposal was to simulate light coming into the tunnel through the cracks in the ceiling. I was inspired by the atmospheric phenomenon called crepuscular rays of sunlight that appear to radiate from the point in the sky where the sun is located. The installation entailed a false ceiling that appeared to be cracked, with a combination of artificial light and fog that simulated a striking natural effect of light emanating from the sky. Lighting was programmed to imitate the color and intensity of the daylight outside of the tunnel. When the weather outside was sunny, the light projected inside through the cracks was bright and yellow. When the weather outside was foggy, the light was blue. And it would change accordingly. As It Is Cracking is an interactive light and video art installation that was created a couple of years later. It is situated in seemingly ordinary empty white room without light. So it looks as the first image, just a dark room. One of the walls in the room was designed to crack over the course of one day. Here you can see a time-lapse images showing different points during the day and how the wall was cracking. As the wall cracked, lights and video appeared through the cracks, simulating the change of daylight that is happening outside. Whenever a visitor came up close to the wall, it triggered sudden flashes of lightning. By depicting the change of daylight seeping through the cracked wall in a closed space, the piece aroused exalted feelings of grand and dangerous nature. By depicting the change of daylight, as we see here, in this piece, I worked with experimental lighting techniques and electroacoustic devices to transform the experience of the playhouse theater space, of one amphitheater space, into a poetic experience of nature. The piece innovated the use of moving image by projecting it into a space filled with haze to create seemingly tangible sculptures made of light. The sculpture wrapped around visitors and continuously changed forms to emulate the vast scale of the universe and the sublimity of nature. The piece creates real and imagined spaces using light and suspended haze throughout light, but also in collaboration with spatialized sound that was created by Daniel Peterson. in response to my work with light. In all of my projects, I use cutting-edge technology to depict nature in order to evoke people's profound sensation from natural beauty and in so engage them into the ever-changing spatial experience. One of the visitors remarked at this point of the installation that this was a scene where that was depicting the sensation of rain, felt more like rain than real rain. It obviously looks artificial, and I used very artificial technological materials, but I attempted to evoke what people know as rain and connect to as rain and to nature. For this alone, I find this work to be successful. And it's something that I'm trying to explain and show through pictures, but it really should be experienced in person, and I encourage you to come and see it next year in Seattle, because we will be doing a new version of this project. Shadow Inverted is an interactive video installation that was created for Microsoft. It is inspired by an idea of a shadow being a place where light is absent. And this interactive piece creates an inverted experience where shadows are illuminated and filled with views of space. The images of universe served as an inspiration when creating visualization of the inner realities, these inverted shadows. As a person would be walking around, it would create a shadow that was filled with videos of space and natural world. I continue to work with Microsoft. They invite me to invent creative applications of their experimental technologies. Here in the work, A Panorama of the Skies, I focused on researching possibilities of immersive projection technologies through which space can be experienced emotionally. As a result, I created an interactive audiovisual installation in which an ordinary conference room at Microsoft headquarters was transformed into an ever-changing sky. So this room was used as a canvas to transform it into space where people can be immersed into a place where the sun rises. So what I did to do for that was I covered the carpet with a reflective material, removed the chairs, and projected on the walls, and that is all. And it created this space where the videos would be slowly immersing viewers into an ever-changing space of the sky. Until the sudden lighting would hit and the stormy weather would take over. Slowly the water would rise, and then again it would return to a bliss. I will show you a video to portray in more detail this project.
My name is Maja Petrić and I'm an artist, and I've been invited by Caravaggio to come and collaborate with him on creating an artwork that utilizes the technologies that he's been working on. Really what interests me is this multitude of the experiences people have when looking at the sky. We have one sky, but the experiences are infinite, and they depend on the location from which you're looking in the sky, on the time of day, on the climate. Most of all, it really depends on your eyes, your subjective view.
My name is Caravaggio, and I'm a researcher and senior researcher here in the Natural Interaction Research Group. This was a standard issue of Microsoft conference room, and we decided to completely transform it. We removed the ceiling, installed projectors and cameras, and made it kind of as a canvas for us to play with and to do some new things in there. And actually this piece is the first actual demonstration of anything in this new space. We felt like it was a really appropriate way of opening up, try to kind of blow our minds and try to do something completely new. So this interactive piece is really kind of the opening for both the space and what Maja has been doing here.
It's trying to place you into this dynamic, ephemeral sky.
At Microsoft, I had a chance to do another project in collaboration with machine learning researcher Nebuchadnezzar, and that was exploring human perception of the sky. The piece investigates the idea that we have one sky, but the experiences are infinite. It is something that I have been fascinated with. That people have been turning their eyes towards the sky for meaning and guidance since the prehistoric times. And what one sees in Reykjavik when looking up is many times different experience from what one sees when looking at the sky in Jamaica. And I'm interested in how those different skies and different views of the sky shape our realities. So it is a project that I've been focused on for many years now by just observing the human perception and the sky at different locations. But working with Nebuchadnezzar, the machine learning researcher, we were able to utilize new technologies to help us understand human connection and human relationship to the sky. So Nebuchadnezzar constructed an algorithm that allowed us to generate the epitome, the representation of different kinds of skies. And here we were trying to do a representation of the polar sky. So Nebuchadnezzar's algorithm sifts online through big data in search of images under the keywords sky, skyscape, North Pole sky, and South Pole sky, and he receives this page, as anybody can do by using internet, and then Nebuchadnezzar's code is able to look at what are the most representative parts in these images, and it extrapolates parts in those images into an epitomized data set representing what people perceive to be a typical polar sky. In other words, it uses these parts of the images as representational parts that are then treated as a brush with which computer paints its own picture of the representational sky. And this is the process of a computer painting the picture, and it ended up with this image representing the polar sky. I created a series of images where we have a person from the region, the polar region, looking up on one part of the image, and on the other part, this generated epitome of the sky. Here we have an epitome of the Hawaiian sky, epitome of the sky in New Mexico, epitome of the Seattle sky, the epitome of the monsoon climate sky, epitome of the Shanghai sky, epitome of the 9/11 sky, and the epitome of the Baghdad sky. I'm currently working on different versions of this project, and this version was looking at how does a sky look in the countries that are considered to be most peaceful countries, like Iceland and New Zealand. This is New Zealand. And how does the sky look like in places that are considered to be most conflicted, such as Syria and Iraq? And this is the epitome of a Syrian sky. Project I'm currently working on is called The Lost Skies, that utilizes the same machine learning algorithms as an artistic tool to generate visualizations of the sky that have been impacted by pollution. The image on the left shows the sky based on meteorological imagery of the sky from the specific location here from Shanghai, and the one on the right shows the same sky from the perspective of a climate change skeptic. This is another piece that is also inspired by nature, and it is a series of dynamic light art boxes made to depict atmospheres of landscapes, creating abstracted and impressionistic experience of nature by experimental use of light that creates a sensation of the landscape changing depending on the angle of viewing. Here I was depicting the sensation of sunlight. Here the box is embodying the sensation of air. This one is of air in a polar climate. And it is inspired by a quote by Claude Monet. "For me, a landscape does not exist in its own right, since its appearance changes at every moment, but the surrounding atmosphere brings it to life. The light and the air, which vary continually. For me, it is only the surrounding atmosphere which gives subjects their true value." And this piece was inspired by the same quote, the same ideas, and this moment in nature. Very similar ideas are embodied in my project The Skies. That is yet another piece looking at the magnificence of ever-changing sky. And it is consisted of 7 boxes positioned above each other. Individually, each box provides a view of a unique part of the sky. But together, 7 light boxes and the light space between them forms a larger scale view at the open sky that is constantly in motion. In each box, there are dynamic lights that are individually programmed to present change of daylight from sunset to sunrise, and so the sky and its 7 modules are constantly changing. It is algorithmically programmed that the same state is never repeated, just as the sky in nature is never the same. By now I have 22 different versions of this type of light art box that I don't have time to show you all of them. I would be happy to show you later on. And each of them are depicting a typical sky from a different place. Those come with new features that derive from my creative research on health and light and art. And all of those works are really looking at human experience. And every creative research answers some questions and poses new ones. So in this research, I was looking at how to create work that has artistic value, but also it can compensate for a lack of exposure to natural light. I'm currently based in Seattle, and that is a very big problem in Seattle. And this type of work is installed in spaces where people can be immersed in an artistic experience of the ever-changing sky, but they're also utilizing a system that I have patented and it's a light exposure tracing device that measures person's exposure to light, and then based on their need to compensate for the lack of exposure, it adjusts the quality and intensity of the light inside of the box. As I said, this type of work is very research-based, and as such it calls for continuous creative inquiry. And in purpose of that, I have designed a master program on light as a creative tool that is offered by European Institute of Design in Madrid this year. And this type of program really teaches us how can we continue asking questions, how can we find ways to answer questions and deal with new ones. The class promotes the approach to light that I have been sharing with you today. It teaches a combination of arts and technological skills that can be applied as activators of innovation. And the course is designed to familiarize students with a wide range of materials, technical approaches, and processes of making light art. And through a series of projects, we promote an experimental approach to utilizing the material of light. The students are taught to reappropriate the traditional use of light sources and utilize cutting-edge technologies to explore lighting and space interaction, light and sound, multisensory perception, conceptual and compositional strategies in lighting, architecture of time, and the relationship between subject, content, meaning, and process. We cover theoretical understandings of light, learning how humans experience light, the phenomenology of light. We study history of light in art, as we talked today, but we also practice use of various light sources and lighting methodologies as a medium of expression. We reappropriate the traditional use of light sources and implement and innovate cutting-edge technologies as a method of delivering an experience. To do all of that, there is a big push on understanding the medium, but also understanding the mechanics of human experience. The end goal is mastering use of light as an experimental tool for creating innovative and truly transformative experience. And this is the skill that will propel light. With those skills, we will be able to use light as a tool to create art that gives immediately, all at once, the shock of life, a sensation of breathing. And I think if we manage to do that, it will be considered success.